Yo, what's up? It's Jason. I'm back with another video. This is another ranking, this time for the year 1979. So we're closing out the 70s. I'll put a link down below. I have a playlist so far of all the years that I've done. I haven't always done them in order. I jumped around. I even have some 2010s and 1980s in there too. The 80s is probably my favorite year still for record collecting in terms of all the various genres, hip hop, punk, metal, you name it. But I have been surprised actually with how many records, just how many records I have from the 70s that have been making my lists. Um, Sort of mostly top 10, 12, 15. This one is going to be a top 15 for 79. Kind of a transition year before the new decade. And as you'll see, there's quite a bit of punk in here, UK punk. I feel like kind of like the dying days of that first wave of UK punk before, you know, US style hardcore and also new wave and post punk, etc. is coming. Couple of metal things in here. Only one real jazz record in here that's a jazz fusion album. If you watch my earlier 70s videos, you saw that I had a lot of funk, soul, jazz fusion in there. Only one real funk soul record in this top 15. And one thing that is different, I believe, so far is it's the first time I've had two records in this top 15 by the same band. In fact, two records within the top 10 by the same band. So keep an eye out for that. It happens, especially in the old days. These bands would pump them out, whether they were kind of pressured by the record label or whatever to get these records out. So that's how it went. Yeah, so nevertheless, let's just jump in, I guess, with number 15. And it is going to be the only jazz album, a jazz fusion album. This is John McLaughlin, I believe guitar player, if I'm not mistaken. He was also in Miles Davis's group. And of course, Kind of Blue has a song dedicated to John McLaughlin. So he returned the favor on this one with a track called Miles Davis, which is a pretty good song. Overall, I've only kind of recently got this album. It's the only one I have by John McLaughlin, and it's called Electric Dreams, by the way. There's electric, but there's also, acoustic kind of instruments. I feel like there is violin on this record for some reason. It's very, I'm going to say more progressive than experimental. Like, I wouldn't say it's avant-garde or experimental and noise or anything like that, but it's more on the progressive side. In fact, if you're a prog rock fan, you probably would like this record. I mean, it doesn't have a lot of rock in there, but it's definitely got some progressive elements, cinematic, kind of movie-esque, longer tracks that go places with a touch of 70s cheese, maybe a little bit in there too. So overall, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Not necessarily my favorite record of the year. I'd say my favorite song on this one is called The Dark Prince on side two. That one's got the coolest elements. But yeah, overall, it's not a bad listen. Something to put on, and maybe something that has to grow on me a little bit more. So that's my number 15. Now, number 14 is going to launch us into kind of a series of UK punk records that are all kind of falling down in the bottom of the top 15 here, mostly because either I haven't had them for very long and haven't grown on me, or I didn't grow up with them. Although I would have heard of these bands, but or the albums are just not super strong. I think one of the things I've realized doing these top 10 rankings is I'm kind of looking for albums that have some really good standout tracks. Obviously, we all love an album that is just overall all amazing. Every song is amazing. Production is amazing. But at the very least, it's got to have a couple of really good standout tracks. Maybe hits. Maybe they were not hits, but they're just really good songs. This album, I don't think has any real standout songs for me, but it is a very cool UK punk band. This is UK Subs, another kind of blues. And they doubled down on this blue theme because the vinyl is also blue vinyl on Gem Records, which is a sub label of RCA, I think. UK Press. Got this record when I was over in Europe doing some record shopping before the pandemic. Blue Inner. And like I said, it's really good, solid UK punk. You're not going to go wrong with this album. I paid a little bit for this one too. It was 20 euro at the time, when the euro was a little higher than it is these days. So yeah, UK subs. That's my number 14. 13 is coming in strong. I like this album a bit more than the UK subs one, and I got it more recently actually. It has to grow on me more, but this is 999 High Energy Plan. Very cool UK punk band. Getting into some pop punk as well, of the original kind, and like similar to Buzzcocks, that kind of thing. High Energy Plan, good album. This is like their third album, I think. So I definitely want to get more by these guys. I want to get the first couple. Not really any standout tracks. Again, I haven't really had it for that long. Only got it like this summer. Homicide, the opener is really good. And this is on Passport Records. OG copy. Put this one back in the sleeve. Number 12. And I just spoke about them. That's the Buzzcocks. Put these guys at number 12. This is not their best album, I wouldn't say. Like, I wouldn't start with this record necessarily, but it is from their classic era. It's from 1979, obviously. And kind of the last record of that era for them. And then after that, I don't think you get a record until like the 90s or something. So, yeah, Pete Shelley probably is going to go off and do a solo thing in the 80s. This one doesn't have any real standout tracks for me. Again, Buzzcocks is a band I'm a little late to the party. Always heard of, always liked the Buzzcocks, my younger punk days, but never really had any of their records, and kind of thought of them a little bit more on the new wave sound. They certainly weren't hardcore by any means. And this one doesn't have, any of the real hits like Fast Cars or Fiction Romance, or What Do I Get, etc. But yeah, the other thing too is looking at the song titles. There's quite a bit of songs. I was going to mention that with the UK subs one, by the way. There's like 19 songs on there. Kind of one of my pet peeves is albums that have too many songs. Although, obviously, if you're a punk band and the songs are really short, it's going to happen, right? But I don't know. Anyway, it's to be debated. What happens here is it's kind of a mixed bag. So I'm going to give it like a 50-50 on this one, because some of them, about half of them I really like. They've got a little bit of beginnings of the future, kind of the modern sound, some new wave, a little bit of post-punk, a little bit of Smiths kind of sound coming in there. Like, I think the track is Hollow Inside on side 2. Almost has a little bit of a Smiths, Johnny Marr kind of vibe going on. Yeah, and I think I read a review actually online of this album, and they said a similar thing, which is that like half of it is sort of their straight up kind of UK punk sound, and the other half is them sort of experimenting a little bit, pushing the envelope towards some newer modern sound. So different kind of tension. Buzzcocks, that's my number 12 for this list. Okay, coming back at number 11 is a very well-known industrial synth band. One of a couple synth-related records we got in this top 15 for 79. Just starting to come through, right? This sound. I have already been called out a couple times for not having some Throbbing Gristle in my 70s list, but that's also because I don't have any Throbbing Gristle on vinyl, but I have lots of Cabaret Voltaire. Now, that being said, I would not recommend this record if you're new to Cabaret Voltaire. I wouldn't necessarily start with this unless you really want to get into their earlier sound, which is really a lot of fun. There's not always a lot of vocals, like sometimes it's instrumental. There's a lot of dub influences on this thing, a bit of reggae, loads of like tape edits, tape loops, and that kind of thing. So definitely on their more experimental phase, before they got a little bit more into kind of techno kind of sounds. I would say Microphonies, which has Sensoria on it, would be their pinnacle album. That being said, that or Crackdown would probably be like the two that I would definitely recommend. Nevertheless, if you're interested in early Cab Voltaire stuff, this is pretty essential. Mix up. I have it on CD as well. This is my OG copy. Came out on Rough Trade Records, famous label and shop in the UK. But that being said, this is I think Italian pressing on Bass Records. Pretty nice copy. Bit of a grail when I got it. One of the few Cab Voltaire albums I didn't have on vinyl. And yeah, it's pretty good. I wouldn't say there's a lot of standout tracks on this. My favorite one on this is probably on Every Other Street, which is on side B. That one I play the most. Kind of a good jam. Got a lot of kind of like dub reggae kind of feel to it. Expect Nothing after that is pretty good too. This is back when Cab Voltaire were actually still a trio. So you have Chris Watson on electronic tape, Stephen Mallender, bass and lead vocals, and Richard H. Kirk on guitar and wind instrument. He's got it listed there. Richard H. Kirk, I think, passed away recently. But, and everybody knows Stephen Mallender as well for the vocals, but Chris Watson is the guy who kind of drops off from the band later on. That's my number 11. I initially had this higher in the ranking. Probably going to be kicking myself later for not putting it properly in the top 10 because some of the stuff that replaced it, a little bit more popular records, we'll just say, bigger name stuff. So this is one of the few really underground things. But there it is. It's number 11. It's a good album, but it's not their best album, I would say. Now, speaking of not necessarily your best album, but a favorite of mine, this one, I like it obviously more than the last one I just showed. And this is going to be kind of our only funk and soul pick for 1979 for my top 15. Not that I don't have a lot of disco and funk records of 79, but this one definitely squeaked into the top 10. Got to get it in there. Number 10, Prince, the self-titled album, not the debut. It's actually his second album. They kind of pressured him, the label sort of pressured him to put this out quickly after the first one. I think they were looking for hits. There wasn't a lot of hits on this one, although I totally love the opener, and it has become a hit, I think. I Want to Be Your Lover, great track on this record. A longer track, too, so the first half of it, has got that kind of pop, falsetto vocals, the whole nine. The second half, it gets like more instrumental. He's got some electric piano stuff going on that's easily going to rival some Herbie Hancock. There's a lot of influences on this record, actually. I hear some P-Funk in there, bit of Rick James with Sexy Dancer. There's some sort of like syrupy R&B. So I Want to Be Your Lover is definitely a killer track on this, and then Why You Want to Treat Me So Bad is just as good, almost. Those two are back-to-back on side one. I think side two, it starts to kind of fall off a little bit, but I mean, just look for this album cover alone, it's got to be in number 10. This is serious business. The man has style. I mean, he is naked on the back on a Pegasus horse here with wings. He's got the stash, the hair, he's got it all. It's kind of hard to believe that Prince is not with us anymore. The guy was a musical genius, and think about it too. This album, when this came out, he was only like 21 years old. So 21 and just taking on the world. I would say this is in my top 5 Prince albums for sure. Maybe top 3, just because I'm missing some key ones too. But like Controversy, Love Sexy, Purple Rain, this one be in my top 5 Prince albums. Probably not the Prince album that you want to start with if you are just collecting vinyl recently or somewhat new to Prince. I don't know. It's not his most popular 80s sound. It's definitely more in the 70s kind of funk and soul, but yeah, great album. I could talk about it for days, basically. Number 9, we're going back into some punk territory, and we're going with Cras. These guys are legends, kind of forefathers of the whole anarcho-punk DIY side of punk. I mean, you had the Sex Pistols and the Clash, and they were all major labels, and that was kind of like poking them in the eye, and cynical fun from Malcolm McLaren, etc. But these guys actually set up their own label, press their own records, and put out their own material, which makes collecting it kind of a pain in the ass because it's very difficult to get OG copies. This is a reissue, a 180 gram reissue, big heavy vinyl, and came out I think on a French label in 2000s. I got it. 45 RPM. Now this is the weird thing about this release and this band. A bit like another band I'm going to talk about later, 2 releases in the same year. So this is listed in Discogs under EPs and singles, although it has like 20 songs on it. Again, punk songs, pretty short. So this is the Feeding of the 5,000, not Stations of the Cras, which is actually their debut. Also came out in '79, which I don't have on vinyl. So I went with the one I have, obviously, and it is great. I mean, this has Do They Owe Us a Living, and also the censorship song. I'm forgetting it now again. Yes, The Sound of Free Speech, which I think is the track that probably got them in biggest trouble for the release of the record, maybe at the pressing plant. I don't know how far it's stretched, but it's a bit of a tirade against Christianity and the power of Christ, etc. So very good punk record, needs to be heard. Lots of snotty vocals, male and female. Early anarcho-punk, some early kind of crust, at least in the sense of just lo-fi kind of production. That's my number 9 today for 1979, Cras, Feeding of the 5,000. Number 8. All right, well, a bit of a spoiler alert. This is a band that has 2 albums in this year and 2 albums in this top 10. And I'm talking about, of course, the legendary UK metal band, metal punk at times, Motorhead, Bomber. 3rd album by them, produced again by was it Jimmy Miller, who at this point was kind of diving deep into heroin and smack. So the band was kind of famously complaining about how late the producer was even for showing up. But yeah, nevertheless, a killer record. It's a little bit rushed compared to the other one. I have the other one ranked higher. But and I've got my OG copy here on Bronze Records. There you go. It's a later reissue, probably from the 80s, with that bronze logo. And it's also a Western German pressing. Bomber. This has got Dead Man Tell No Tales, which is kind of an anti-heroin track. Lawman. His Lemmy's Rip on the Cops, Sweet Revenge, Poison, Stone Deaf Forever is another big one, and of course the title track Bomber. The band says also like that they sound a lot better live. These versions sound a lot better live than this record, because they hadn't really toured these songs too much before it got put out. But nevertheless, it's still a very killer record and legendary, and it's in my top 10. I was going to put it lower just because you're going to see Motorhead twice, and I thought it was a little bit unfair to some of the other bands, but you know, it is a solid album. Can't take it away from them. So that was number 8. Let's see, 7. All right, so coming in at number 7 is a monster of a hard rock album by the Scorpions, and a pretty well-known record, you know, compared to some of the earlier stuff I was shown. But Love Drive, this really kind of kicks them off into the modern era of Scorpions, I'd say. Gone are the more proggy, krautrock even inspired stuff from the 70s. This is late 70s, this is 79, and this record is not my favorite Scorpions album. I'm really a Blackout kind of kid. I kind of grew up on that one, had the cassette right away when it came out, 82, and also like Love at First Sting. So I'm more of an 80s Scorpions guy, but this is the crossroads, right? This is the crossover between the 70s to the 80s. It's got some of that pop sensibility and hard rock, and of course, I think this is produced by who did the production on this one? I was gonna say, no, that is a different record I'm thinking of. But you do have, I think this is the first appearance of Michael Schenker on guitar on this one. It's the first one without Uli also on it. And it does have some really cool standout tracks. Love You Sunday Morning is still one of my favorite. Another Piece of Meat is a pretty big rocker. Can't Get Enough. Is There Anybody Out There? And of course, Love Drive. Definitely a solid record. I got kind of a beat up copy. You can still find this one relatively cheap in bins, and if you see it for cheap, definitely pick it up. Scorpions Love Drive, that's my number 7. Number 6, the only other synth record in this top 15, and it is the cool, calm and collected Gary Newman here. Gary Newman, some really cool new wave synth pop, The Pleasure Principle. This has Cars on it, of course. And a lot of songs that sound like the Cars, actually. They're the Cars track, not the band, the Cars. But Metal, Airplane, Observer. There's Films is cool on here. I mean, it's very consistent. It's, him checking out the synth. But yeah, there are definitely a couple tracks on here that sound exactly like Cars, but with just different lyrics. And so that's kind of one of the reasons it kind of is a little lower in my list. It would be maybe higher, just given like sort of the uniqueness of this record and this whole sound really kind of kicked off a lot of the synth wave, synth pop kind of sound. Got to see Gary Newman live once in Amsterdam. It was a really cool concert, and I think he waited until the very end to play Cars because he's probably, or I think he played it really kind of mid-set and sort of rushed through it because I think he's probably pretty sick of that song at this point. Great album, though. So that's number 6. And number 5. This one surprised me. I actually had this lower on my list, but when I gave it a quick listen, I really, really dig this record by Joe Jackson. I'm the Man. I think this is his... Is this his debut? I gotta check this here. 1 second. So no, Look Sharp is actually the debut, and it is a fave of mine too, but this is his second album from 79, I'm the Man. The title track is killer, but also On Your Radio is a really great pop hit. This is sort of power pop, post-punk, a little bit new wave. Really, a lot of the songs are great on this. Almost every song is really good, with a couple standouts as well. So early Joe Jackson, recommended for days, this one and the Look Sharp album, right up to like Stepping Out, but then after that it kind of gets a little bit on the syrupy side of things, but this is it. My number 5, Joe Jackson, I'm the Man. Number 4, all right, I had to get this sucker in here. Some people could even probably put this as their number 1. It is a massive, massive hit record. It's their second biggest selling record, from the band Down Under. And it's produced by Mutt Lange as well. So on top of it all, AC/DC, Highway to Hell, the last album with Bon Scott. He died about a year after the release of this album. So I don't think they got to tour too much of it, but they probably toured the hell out of it for 1 year. Shot Down in Flames, Highway to Hell, Girls Got Rhythm. If You Want Blood, You Got It is on here. I mean, everything on this thing. This is a killer hard rock album. Definitely definition of modern rock and roll right here. Licks for days. I mean, the guitar riffs are just killer. This is a pretty roughed up, beat up copy I got, but I like to favor OGs, as you know. And this is actually a Netherlands Dutch pressing of the record. It plays really solid, and got it for €9. Highway to Hell in my top 5. Oops, that's number 4 actually. Number 3, just edging above it. Had to go with some UK punk legends again. The Damned, Machine Gun Etiquette, probably my second favorite album by The Damned. Not as good as Damn Damn Damned, but this is their third album. I'm missing that one, the second one in the middle. But yeah, Love Song, it's just a great track. Same with the title track. I think I'm more on side 1 than side 2 for this record. But love the production. It's got that raw kind of quality, just sort of matches perfectly the vocals. And definitely 1970s UK punk. Done well, done right, produced well. Good album. Machine Gun Etiquette. So my last top two, and these kind of went back and forth a little bit. I could have put this as number one. Just again, unique kind of on the scene, influential album, fun album. But I put it at number two, and that is the B-52s debut. Where would we be without the B-52s? I mean, they definitely injected a lot of fun into new wave punk. This is a pop record as well. Planet Claire, 52 Girls, Rock Lobster, and then Don't Mess Around. I mean, that is a solid side A, if there ever was one. And then side B is also really great too. Lava, Hero Worship, Downtown. I mean, they're not as played as big as the first side tracks, but I got 2 copies of this actually. This is a Canadian press with the maple leaf. Definitely a record I play often in DJ sets. Who doesn't? A lot of party tracks on that one. So that's my number 2. Going for number 1. If you haven't guessed it already, because I did mention a couple times, there's a band in here twice, and this is the other record that they put out in '79. This is Overkill by Motorhead. I just recently got an OG copy of this, so I really couldn't do my '79 properly until I got my copy of Overkill. I never had it on vinyl, even reissue-wise. I had the CD, and wow, I have to say, top to bottom, this just smokes. There's a hell of a lot of good songs on this record. No Class, Damage Case, Metropolis, Overkill, Stay Clean, Capricorn. I mean, yeah, some songs that went very deep into their live performances many, many years later. It's their second album, right? Possibly their best album. This or Ace of Spades would be my top 2 from Motorhead. A great album to start off with Motorhead for sure. Just one of their classic records. Pretty killer cover too. So there you go. That is my top 15. Took longer than I expected. A couple of takes. Let me know what you guys think. What do you think I was sorely missing in '79? It might be something I also dig, but I just don't have a copy of it on vinyl. And I'll see you guys